Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an
The
atheist.
fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
and start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
You know what's funny? I was doing the math. You say the word teenager. You go, teenager? How many years has it been? 25? 25 years? No! I mean, do you think about, has it been that long? Are you kidding? A quarter of a century? Doggone it, these kids today. Back when I was a young child, we walked uphill to school both ways, and we liked it. Yeah, I just feel myself getting older. And it's true. I've been caught a few times starting to talk like my parents. You go to the movies, rated R movie, you see someone in there. Are they old enough to be in here? Did you see what they were wearing? Make sure you eat your vegetables. I mean, it just happens. I'm trying to be self-aware enough so as I creep slowly but surely toward the age of 50 that maybe I can stave off the weird old thing where you get old and just get repetitive and crotchety and strange and demented. And you know what I'm talking about? When someone over the age of, say, 65, 70 years old, and not everybody, but I mean, there are some people, relatives, usually they call and they start to talk on the phone. And you don't even speak. You just sit there with the phone kind of mashed up next to your head and you do something else. You watch television, you read a book, play a game on your phone, text some other people, send an email. Because all you're really hearing is... And occasionally you go, yeah, About every 10 minutes, just to let them know you're there. Please don't let this happen to me. I remember as a teenager thinking I knew so much. I was cocky. 16 years old, 17 years old. I thought I had the answers. I thought I knew. Thought I was smarter than everybody else in the room. And then 20 years later, you realize how much you don't know. When you have so much more life experience, probably been in a marriage, at least one, traveled the world, maybe, had a series of jobs, bought a home, fulfilled the obligations of adulthood, increased your education in so many ways, and yet you all of a sudden, it's like you realize, I don't know much about anything. I sort of miss sometimes that kind of that naive confidence. You hadn't really gotten out of school. You hadn't really emerged from the cocoon. Now, there are some young people, honestly, who really have. They've matured more than some adults. They've traveled. They've been through the school of hard knocks. Many of them have had to grow up sooner than later, didn't have much of a choice. But a lot of young people, and I was one of them, are simply pre-adults. And you're sort of finding your way, finding your identity, clumsily navigating dating and friendships and heartache and school and what am I going to do with the rest of my life? My parents are driving me freaking crazy. I had so many people say, you should do a show about young people, and that's what we're doing tonight. I can't relate I don't know your music. I don't. I don't know what's trendy. I don't know what's fashionable. I don't know what the mindset of young people today is, other than I take heart when I receive emails and see posts on Facebook and see, of course, and get phone calls from the podcast switchboard from young people who talk about exercising their brains. See, when I was growing up, it was about starting with the answer. They drill it into you, man. Drill it into you. For me, it was God and Jesus and the Bible. For a Muslim child, it's Allah and the Quran. It's different everywhere you go, usually based on your family culture and geography. For me, we started out, yes, there is a God, yes, there is Jesus, and yes, he's in the sky, and yes, he loves you, and yes, there is a heaven, and yes, there is a hell. So I spent my teen years as a spokesperson for Youth for Christ and student leader and student council presidents and all these happy, clappy, uber clean student leader positions, feeling like I had started with an advantage. I have the answers. And I am here to give people decades older than myself the benefit of my wisdom. I would stand on stage. I would lead chapel services. You know? I'm meeting a lot of young people who aren't like that. They are curious. Much more self-aware about their place in the cosmos. Hungry for information. Hungry for answers, asking questions. And if they don't like the answers, they don't shut down because, well, I'm a kid, I'm a teenager. They say, no, that's not good enough. I really want to know. I really want to know. They thank me for the community of the Thinking Atheist and for giving them a place where they can come and sponge up information. Some of it good. That gives me a lot of pride. We start with a letter from Brendan. He said this. He said, I want to start off with a huge thanks to you personally, Seth. You changed my life in such a way that I will never be able to express the amount of gratitude I feel. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. The person I am today is in no small part thanks to you. Now let me pause. I don't know if you can imagine the feeling of responsibility that gives to someone like me when you feel like there are young minds who are listening. You know, tremendous sense of responsibility, right? Because I realize many of these young people are under their parents' or guardians' care. And I need to be respectful of that. And so I really want to walk that delicate tightrope, you know, between presenting information that people, I hope, would digest and accept and challenge and engage with, and at the same time not trying to subvert any and every parental influence out there. That's not what I want. His letter continues. He says, now for my story, if you want to call it that. My parents were never particularly religious, although they do believe in God. But Christianity was always fed to me by my grandparents, and I never had a reason to question what I was taught. I never went to a single church exclusively, but I would go with my friends and their parents sometimes, and occasionally my grandparents would drag me along. Skip a decade, and I was a senior in high school, almost 3 years ago. I was messing around on YouTube one day when I happened by your The Story of Susie video. That was the second video I ever produced, by the way, in 2009. He said this was the event horizon, you might say. In a couple minutes, my mind was blown wide open. I began to question everything. For the next 3 days, from the time I got home from school until I fell asleep, I sat in my bed watching debates from Richard Dawkins and the late Christopher Hitchens on the morality of God, the science behind evolution, etc. I tried to deny what was going through my mind and countering their arguments as best I could. We've all seen how well faith allows the denial of logic. As more and more questions kept popping up, but the three of you annihilated 17 years of belief in 3 nights. As much as I wanted to believe, I just couldn't. And now here I sit, less than a week away from 20, with the God delusion, and God is not great, next to me, and dreams and plans to become an astronomer, astrophysicist, trying to briefly convey my deconversion story and how, with just a little reason and an open mind, anyone can shed age-old superstitions and see and experience life in ways that only atheists can. Thanks again from myself, my future kids, hopefully my 9-year-old brother. I'm working on it, much to the dismay of my parents, and quite possibly every new branch on my family tree below me. You are impacting lives in drastic and wonderful ways, Seth. Thanks again. Sincerely, Brendan, the only open atheist you will ever encounter in my neck of the woods in Ohio. Brendan, thank you so much for the letter and for the kind words. Don't give me too much credit. You know, it's funny. A lot of it has to do with whether or not the door of information is a two-way door. It's funny when you're receiving and not just sending, and you start to see other perspectives. It's amazing how things can change. I'm excited for you. Tim sent me a letter. He said, my deconversion was fairly uneventful. But because of my circumstances, I come from a very fundamentalist background. The days following have been quite interesting. I go to a Christian college, and while I haven't experienced much overt discrimination, I haven't been able to really connect with anyone. More recently, people have begun to make excuses to avoid me. And one person I'd considered a friend informed me that he would work to undermine any romantic relationships that might develop between me and any Christian girls on campus. I don't have a problem with dating a theist. I view that issue as something that can be worked through, like divergent political beliefs. But as you are well aware, religion is not something to be taken so flippantly in Christian circles. I feel isolated, like I have no one to confide in. My motives aren't sinister. I'm not out to destroy people or lead them down a dark path. I just want to feel connected, to find someone to love and be loved by, regardless of their religious beliefs. I want to find people my age who don't care about my lack of religion and can accept me for who I am. Is this too much to ask? Am I being selfish? Should I just play along at their charades? I feel conflicted, but at the end of the day, I'm just tired of being alone. Tim, thanks for the letter. Let's go to the switchboard. If you don't want to give your real name, and I'm talking to young people. I mean, I don't know what age groups, what geographies, what backgrounds, cultures, life stories I'm going to encounter today. Quite frankly, if you would like to speak transparently, but you don't want to give your name, your real name, you want to call yourself anonymous, I'm easy, and I totally understand. It's up to you. 3, 2, 1. Hi, thanks for your patience on hold. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Luke.
Luke, are you a young person, teenager, whatever?
I am 17.
Talk to me. What do you think?
Well, the first thing that happened to me was I found out that I was gay before I ever thought of even leaving the church. I went to a Catholic school, and I was honestly terrified of myself. I couldn't think straight anymore. How can I do this? How can I even behave the right way if I'm made incorrectly? Like I'm some kind of reject human.
Yeah, something's wrong with you. It's not natural. Homosexuality is unnatural. Therefore, you are unnatural, and you've probably got identity issues, right?
I did. And right now I'm still going through the coming out process of both atheism and homosexuality and everything. But the only one I've told both about to is my mom. And it shows how much of a social life I have if you were looking for the whole social life.
May I ask, and don't let me get too deep into a sensitive area, but are they Catholic? Are they Protestant? Do they not care?
I think the best way to classify my mom would be deist. She believes in God, but she believes in Jesus and everything, but the Bible, like she says that some parts are really outdated, and she says that some parts she really doesn't believe in, she actively disagrees with. But my dad, however, is a Catholic, and my grandmother, whom I love very much, is a Catholic, and she's very devout. She reads the Bible all the time. And when I think about her and all the stuff she said to me, when my parents got divorced, I stopped going to church as often. I only go to church on the days that I'm with my dad. On the weekends, I'm with my dad. My mom, I don't go. And so my grandmother was like, don't let your faith grow cold. I don't want you to be lost from the love of God. And well, not those exact words, but
no, I understand. Plus, they come from a generation that most of which, in my experience, at least here in the States, has no idea what to do with the word atheist. I have found that the over 70 crowd, they just shut down. They don't know what to do with it. Are your friends in that loop? Do they support you, or are you just totally sort of in the dark and waiting at this moment?
I'm kind of in the waiting thing. With my friends, I told them that I was an atheist because I figured that would be the easier thing for the people I know in my school to swallow, because I live in a pretty conservative area. And I got into a couple debates, not really heated, but it's not usually anything that would destroy a friendship, though, because, most of them are just like pizza party Christians who go to the youth groups. And when you said indoctrination, that's basically what it is. But it's kind of like softcore indoctrination. It's the good cop.
May I have my phone?
It sounds like you've got some obligations, my friend.
Yes, I do.
All right. Well, I'm glad you made it onto the show, though. Thank you for a great call. I know it's not an easy road, but you're not alone in this, okay?
Okay.
All right. Take care. I understand, life gets busy. Sometimes you can't just put everything on hold. When you're calling a radio show, you got to go and take care of stuff. 704. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is Jasmine.
How old are you, Jasmine?
18.
Okay.
I started about 2 years ago. I was actually watching TV, and I came across the word atheist, and I was like, at the time I was sort of having religious doubts and questions, and the word sort of made sense to me. I started fooling around on YouTube, found some videos, just found your podcast a few weeks ago. Loved it, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And you're welcome. And I found it, and I started, listening to podcasts and videos and reading books, and it just made sense to me. And I haven't really told my family yet. A few of my friends know.
I'm guessing they are religious, right? Am I seeing this pattern? They're religious?
Yes, I'm in North Carolina in this Bible Belt, sort of. So I get a lot of questions because I'm totally blind, and a lot of people ask me, do I hate God because I'm blind? And I'm like, no, I don't think he exists. So it'd be like me hating unicorns or something, You've been blind all your life? Yes, I was born without an optic nerve.
So were you ever a believer? I mean, did they teach you the Bible and all of that stuff growing up?
Yeah, I was actually pretty devout, but then stuff happened. My uncle died. He'd been waiting on a kidney transplant, and that sort of made me sort of question. And I read the Bible, and I did all that stuff, but then atheism just sort of made sense to me.
Help me out here because I'm ignorant, okay? So educate me.
Okay.
You are blind, right?
Totally blind.
How do you use YouTube?
And there's a screen reader called JAWS for Windows, and I got it on my computer, and it reads everything to me. And I use the arrow keys instead of the mouse and stuff.
How cool is that?
It is pretty cool. I love the computer, and I'm not a computer nerd, but I do love going on the internet.
You can be a computer nerd with us. That's all good. Trust me. I kind of wish I was. I've got kind of a tertiary knowledge. I'm good with the interface. I'm good with software. I'm good with, punching the buttons. But when it comes down to why it works, nah.
That's my friend. I have a friend who is also totally blind, and he does all this.
Did you carry any resentment over your disability, or is it just the way it's always been? It's totally normal for you.
Boy, it's just normal. Just part of life.
Well, you sound awesome to me, Jasmine. And
thank you.
If you're doing YouTube without being able to see YouTube, that's a heck of a lot more awesome than the way I'm doing it.
I actually want to start creating YouTube videos. I have a friend who would be willing to help me film the videos, and I'm going to hopefully, whenever I get a webcam, start making videos, hopefully.
Well, I'm glad you're a listener to the show and that you enjoy them. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate you being part of the show, okay?
Okay.
All right. Take care, Jasmine.
You too.
That's awesome. That's something that those of us in the hearing world, my father's deaf. Long story short, he had nerve deafness when he was very young, and it slowly caused the hearing to go. And so he could hear on the phone in the early 60s, and then his hearing slowly just went away. Well, he never learned to sign, and we used to do the TTY thing where you were typing over the telephone. It was old technology back then. And he went in and got cochlear implants where they actually put a computer inside your skull. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. And at the age of, I want to say he was 70 when they put those in. And he was able to hear again. Now, I don't know what that could sound like. It's got to be some kind of electronic thing where you have to teach your brain to interpret differently. I don't know. But I hear about things like that, and I'm just like, oh wow, that is amazing. And then I hear some chowderhead say, "Thank you, Jesus," and I'm like, shut the fuck up. How much was that operation? How long was the recovery? How long did it take him to retrain his brain? Thank a doctor. Thank a nurse. Thank the support staff. Thank the scientists. People. God. Wow. I just digressed and I went away. Sorry about that. Elizabeth wrote in, she said this. She said, one issue I dealt with growing up is that I feel doesn't get as much attention is that how the legal age of majority affects teens. As we each begin turning 18, my friends and I would become frustrated at how it seemed that adults would use that magical number, 18, over us when it was convenient for them. You want to vote? Too bad, you're not 18 yet. You don't want to get a job? Well, that's too bad because you're 18. As teens, we found it frustrating to one day be treated like a child, and then almost overnight be expected to know how to make responsible decisions like who to vote for, whether to be an organ donor in case of an accident, or even whether you're sick enough to sign yourself out of school. There's no set age at which everyone instantly becomes an adult. At best, you can say the average person's brain finishes developing around the age of 25. She says it's a true fact. Look it up. The transition between childhood and adulthood is confusing and turbulent enough without responsible, quote-unquote, responsible grown-ups treating us as either children or adults when it suits them. I'm thinking about researching this issue more. I realize, too, that it's even potentially damaging, not to mention kind of demeaning, to attempt to group individuals under 18 like that. Prepubescent children are definitely not the same as teenagers, and even then you can't treat 13-year-olds as the same as 16-year-olds. Attempting to deny teens various aspects of their growing personalities, whether it's political opinions, sex, love, religion, or lack thereof, career choices, because they're just children, helps nobody. I wish more adults would remember that teens are neither children nor adults, but transitioning from one to the next. I struggle with that in my own mind. Sometimes I will have someone come to me who is, 14, right? 14. And they're usually theist, products of Christian homes. Hell, I got a few in my own family. And they are coming to me because they want to fix me. They want to rescue me. They have been programmed from an early age that they must preach the gospel. So they're going to come, and I get emails and Facebook posts about coming back to Jesus. Come back to Jesus. And I find myself wanting to say, you're 14. You've never driven a car. You don't have a job, never had a paycheck, you've never voted, you're not old enough to join the military. Chances are you haven't really done a whole lot outside of the cocoon of your home life and school life, the secure, nurturing, relatively carefree life that you have has not allowed you to come and guide me back to religion. That's one of the first things that comes to my mind. And then I remember what it was like to be a teenager. You have you're still learning. How do I deal with things? How do I deal with people? Problem solving, learning how to communicate, wanting to be valuable, wanting to be popular, wanting to matter. The worst thing somebody could have done to me is look at me and say, call me when you're 21, kid. I did have something to offer. Maybe not in the way I thought. You know, I thought I was walking around with all the answers, right? I was Mr. Jesus. I was Mr. Hey, put him on stage. He's a clean-cut, strapping young man. He'll be a great representative of the faith, and he knows the Bible. Not in that way. It's a weird, I go back and forth sometimes. Maybe there's a way to balance the two. A lot of young people are aware. They're self-aware. They're like, look, I get it. I realize I haven't been out in the world. But I have genuine thoughts and genuine opinions and genuine feelings I would like to explore, and I don't want them brushed aside just because I'm not a 25-year-old yet. I understand that. 319, thanks for your patience on hold. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hey, Jeff, this is Sam.
What's going on, Sam?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about my deconversion. I had been in Catholic school my entire life up until 8th grade, and it would have had to have been 7th grade, I think, when I first started questioning questions like, I'd been in an airplane before, and I know that heaven wasn't in the sky, so where was heaven? And after that, I started thinking other questions like, what happens to people who have never heard of Jesus or God or anything? Then more provocative questions started coming into my mind, and, then I decided that I had to start researching this stuff. So keep in mind this was when I was in 7th grade, and I didn't want to embarrass myself by talking about it with my teachers or my parents or anything, so I just went straight to the internet. And what I found was a lot of opinions that weren't my own or from the people around me. And so, I started searching stuff on YouTube, and eventually I came along with one of your videos, and I forget which one it was, but I think it was the Noah's Ark one. And I thought that was interesting, and it made sense. It just made sense. And so I kept looking at more of your videos, and, eventually I came upon the story of Susie. And, that really opened my eyes. And so, after like a few weeks of researching more topics and more issues, I finally decided that, Christianity just didn't make sense anymore. So one weekend, I refused to go to church with the rest of my family. And after a while, they just gave up and went to church without me. And so that night, I invited my mom into my room, and I finally told her, I didn't believe in this stuff anymore. And she said that was okay, but that she wanted religion to be, have some sort of role in my life. Not necessarily Christianity, but faith in general life.
You know how telling that is? I have a few thoughts. The first thought, of course, being that your parents will forever blame me for the fact that you are an atheist. No, but think about what that kind of statement is. I don't care. It doesn't have to be Christianity, but I want religion to be a part of your life. In other words, you have to believe in something. And I hear this a lot. It's like, pick a higher power. Is that real conviction to me? I mean, if you really believe that there is pick a god out of the tens and tens of thousands of gods, if you believe there is a Zeus or whatever, why would you say, well, go worship Aphrodite, whatever, it's all good, just pick one?
I think she thought I was going through a phase or something, and that eventually I'll come back and worship someone or something, choose a faith that I would be comfortable with.
Does the flying spaghetti monster count? Can you maybe just put some posters up or something? Just kind of keep her happy for a few years?
I actually got a copy of the Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster around here.
It's the FSM Bible, I guess is what it's called, is wickedly funny. I ordered a copy years ago when I first deconverted. And it's not just a novelty that you keep in the house because it's funny. It's really well written. It's clever and it's really, there's a lot of jabs in there at the ridiculous nature of superstition. I would encourage, I don't get any commissions off of it either, but if you get a chance, you should go on Amazon or wherever and see if you can find it. Is it called The Gospel? I'm trying to remember. The Gospel of the Flying Spaghetti Monster? Was that it right?
Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me, but I think that's what it's called.
Just Google it. You'll find it. Well, honestly, whatever happens, whatever you end up holding as your worldview, I hope it is yours and not merely inherited. I hope it's you being comfortable in your own skin and deciding for yourself. So many people are content not to rock the boat. And so they just decide they're going to go ahead and live somebody else's way, and decades pass before they finally decide that they have had enough. So I'm happy for you, and I wish you the best, sir.
Okay, thanks, Seth. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Very kind. Let's see. On Skype, I've got Spencer. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast.
Hey, Seth.
What's going on, Spencer?
It's great to finally make it on your live podcast.
Glad you called, man. It's a real pleasure. Are you a teenager or what?
Yeah, I'm 16.
Okay.
I have to first say now that I got the chance, thank you, Seth, for everything you do.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It really is.
It seemed a lot more minute, though, after listening to the previous callers.
No, honestly, I'm really glad to be able to give 90 minutes to young people. You have a perspective that I don't have. I thought about bringing in a freaking 16-year-old that I thought could handle it and having them essentially host, and I would just hang back, But I just didn't know anybody well enough to put them in that position. So I'm letting you guide the content. Were you a believer? Okay. Are you a believer? What's your story?
Well, right now I go to Christian private school, and I was Christian when I first started going to the school. Now, being an atheist, it causes the days to be a bit more aggravating than regular high school typically would be.
How long ago did you start religious school?
About 4 years ago.
Okay. And when did you sort of slip out of your faith? How did that work?
About last year.
Okay. So we're talking Bible classes and Wednesday chapel or what?
Yeah, Monday chapel, the whole typical Christian school.
Now, is it for you, is it like almost like you're conducting a case study now? You're watching how the religious community acts and what they teach and how they teach it? Or are you in hell thinking, get me out of this room? I mean, what's going on in your head?
Well, some days it's like that. Our science class is what really drives me and a couple of my friends who also use logic. And I know one friend, Caleb, is listening to the podcast right now. And it's like the school has to teach national curriculum. And so they actually have to teach facts like genetics, mutations, and, of course,
they actually have to teach facts.
Yeah. But on our 6-week course focused on genetics, we spent 2 minutes on natural selection, which is, of course, the primary thesis to biology. And during that 2-minute presentation, if you've ever had a look at the Index to Creationist Claims website, I kid you not, our teacher used at least 11 of them in a 2-minute presentation.
It's like they went to Answers in Genesis and got their entire lesson plan.
That page was used in the presentation, Answers in Genesis, She told our class that macroevolution has never been observed. Macroevolution is completely different to microevolution. Evolution is just a theory. All mutations are harmful, and this proves the human race is irreducibly complex and proves God. All in a science class coming from a biology teacher.
Wow. And, of course, most everybody in your class is probably wide-eyed and nodding. Oh, yes, praise Jesus. Amen.
Consumed it all up. And when I protested, threatened to kick me out of the class, and on top of this, she armed my peers with stupidity to use against me, which, of course, they all did when the lesson was over.
Start me again now. Did you raise a hand of protest during the class?
Well, for the first minute, she was going fine, explaining how microevolution worked, but then just divulged into insanity from there.
You're going to go back into that classroom, say, tomorrow.
Right. No,
what are your thoughts? You walk in, are you thinking, this is going to be the longest 55 minutes of my day?
No, my teacher is all right, though. Like, she doesn't get cranky about it, even though I completely disagree with what she taught a few times. But what frustrates me most is that the people just consumed it right away and then used that, what she taught, against me. Like, the ability to think critically is completely gone. It's a lack of recognition of any intelligence, a sort of pseudo-anti-intellectualism.
Do you feel like it's a quelling of curiosity? Don't ask too many questions. God doesn't really want us to know He's God. Have you sensed that?
Yeah, it's like it's been drilled into kids. and that they don't want to ask any questions. And if they do, if I even bring up a subject that, they've never heard about, they just completely wide eyes. Like, I had a conversation once with a student, and she said, I told her that the human race, we live 4 times longer than we did 1,000 years ago, and she could not believe that we actually live more, not less, because she thought that people actually lived until they were 800 years old.
She believed the story of Methuselah.
Completely. Yeah.
His ilk, 900 plus, almost a millennium. And these people will grow up to vote. It's just amazing. Do you find a frustration as a teenager? Do you feel like that older voices do not listen to you? I mean, I spoke a moment ago about trying to balance the perspective. Are you aware that I'm not an adult yet, I still have a lot to learn? Or do you feel like, geez, I have a voice and nobody's listening?
Sometimes with some people you find that it's just you're meeting to a brick wall, and that, they just disregard whatever you have to say. But then with some people you do actually get through, and you do, regardless of what your age is, you do get through to people, and you do persuade them to think differently about something.
It sounds to me like you are challenging much of what they are teaching, even openly at your private religious school. Are you on somebody's radar as a potential non-believer, or are you just kind of playing it cool?
I live in New Zealand, and the school is what's called it's part of the government. It's a government, it's a integrated school system. So the government funds everything. It's just, they're allowed to pray in school, and they're allowed to allow a special character to come in. It's their favored admitted. So once you're in, they can't really do anything about your faith, They just want to make sure you meet that special character when you register.
So you can raise as much hell as you want? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't think so. There's a friend of mine in a higher grade than me who also is probably going to be listening to this podcast, who has got into trouble a few times. But like I said, you can't really get into trouble for that kind of stuff, because it is freedom of speech. It's freedom of expression. What you're doing isn't teaching wrong, as long as you're not really making fun of people's beliefs and just openly saying this is what scientists believe, this is what it actually is. Like, for example, my English speech, I did it on evolution. So in front of a class of 26 students, I did a full-on speech about evolution, why it is true, and major comebacks to evolution and why they're completely wrong.
Man, I just want to fly to New Zealand and shake your hand, man. That's just awesome. That is awesome. Dude, when I was 16 years old, I mean, I had almost no curiosity. And here you are challenging the established norms, challenging essentially what they are teaching as a curriculum in the school and backing it up with evidence. See, I had one of those moments myself. I'm prepping a speech for the Imagine No Religion 2 conference, which is this weekend in Canada. And part of the speech is talking about how in the age of the internet, in the age of information, why are we still debating so many of these things that with just even a tertiary glance, with a little bit of homework, you could... I mean, evolution by natural selection is one of those things where if you actually do look at it...
And it's so simple, too.
Yeah. The one I heard this week was, well, carbon dating doesn't work.
Yeah, I've heard...
Well, it doesn't work on fossils. And I'm like, well, that's right, because you're not supposed to use carbon dating on fossils. That's why, But
No.
Hell, I'm not an expert, and I did a little homework and got educated. And even as a civilian, I understand that it's only good up to, 20,000 years? And there are other forms of dating. And I think to myself, our religious biology teachers they're not doing even basic research. They're just regurgitating what's in a religious textbook. I'm glad you're out there, arguing the other side, keeping everybody honest. You must make the teachers crazy sometimes.
Oh, well, I try not to go over the line,
And I appreciate that. Honestly, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Sometimes it gets replaced. You don't want to be such a pain in the ass that they just say, hey, you're out of here, that you end up causing more trouble for yourself then. But to raise a legitimate hand of challenge and occasionally protest and say, well, actually, I don't believe this is accurate, I think that has merit. I think it's a gutsy thing to do.
Yeah, and still some sort of respect. And you said, come and shake my hand. Next year, there's a global atheist convention. Aaron Raw went to it in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
You should come down here.
I'd like to be a part of it. I I don't know that I've got the spare change to fly to Melbourne, but if I'm ever invited to participate in some way, if there's any way, I would love to go down. Yeah, I like to go down and be a part of that. And if I do, if we get a chance to be in the same zip code, it might be my pleasure to meet you. And Caleb, I'd like to meet you both, okay?
Right. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Spencer. Take care.
Bye.
That's awesome. Tyler sent me a message. He said, I'm currently in the 8th grade. Been an atheist most of my life. Back in elementary school, that was fine with all the other kids. However, when I got into middle school, a lot of kids started harassing me about my beliefs. I've been called a demon. I don't know how many times. People will always say to me, I'll pray for you. This is incredibly annoying. I don't know if I'm an oddity or if this happens to others, but it's bugging me, and I've noticed that most everyone who says these things come at it from a fundamentalist point of view. My main problem is I'm a very argumentative person. If I have a different opinion on a topic, I will begin to argue my point. People tell me this is why I'm so hated. I guess I'm just asking for your advice. How should I handle this? Should I keep up my debater side, or should I back down? Well, Tyler, I can't really tell you how to proceed specifically. I can only tell you what my perspective and what I do in my circles. And I think there is a time and a place. There are some moments when it's just better to just shut up and let it go. It's not going to achieve the result that you want. It's not the right venue. Some people, they'll jump in at any moment. They'll go to a friend's house and they decide they're going to bow for prayer and bless the meal. Well, I'm not going to bless the meal. I'm an atheist and Jesus doesn't exist and farmers and people grew the food anyway. Screw y'all. No, I don't think that's productive. I don't close my eyes. I don't say a prayer. I do bow my head quietly until it's over with, and then I enjoy the food with my friends and family. Fine. But if I am in a situation where somebody is influencing someone else, or maybe we're just having coffee and it's one or two people and we can actually have a constructive conversation, yeah, I'll say, no, I don't agree with that at all. I had a guy, he was talking to me, was it this week? It was this week. We know a very smart guy. He's a successful businessman, and he's very successful. He's very together, right? And you wonder, how is it that someone who is so intelligent and so uber sharp in all of these areas of his life can be religious? And I talked to Michael Shermer from Skeptic Magazine about this very thing. And of course, he responded that, the religious largely are not dumb. That's a misstatement. It's wrong. It's not about intelligence. It's about programming. It's about how the brain works, how you can be rational in all these other areas, and you can be irrational about religion. It's very, very common. So anyway, he comes up to me. We're talking about something, and I forgot exactly what I said. I'm sure it was a dig at religion, And he's like, well, so-and-so's religious. How do you explain him? He's the smartest guy in the building. And I chose that moment to actually engage. And I said, well, actually, it has nothing to do with intelligence. Have you read the book, The Believing Brain by Michael Shermer? It's some great insights into how it works. Before you know it, it's 15 minutes later, and we've had we didn't change each other's minds, but it was the right venue, the right moment. I think you can be so much on the offense that you repel people, that you come off as hateful, that you come off as someone who is obsessed, who is... if you're vibrating all the time, you're a bomb waiting to go off. That's bad mojo, man. Life is balance. Life is balance. Choose your battles. Choose your battles. And, if you're in class and you have an opportunity to raise a hand and ask a teacher a legitimate question or to challenge something, I say go for it. If you're raising your hand every 5 minutes and just stirring the pot and nothing comes of it and you're just derailing momentum and everybody in the class is starting to get pissed off and now you've alienated yourself from everyone and this is the only school you'll ever go to, you've essentially just made life monumentally difficult for yourself and accomplished nothing positive. So it's honestly, it's going to be unique to you. You're going to have to choose those battles as you see fit. I don't know. Does any of that make sense? I'm not not an expert on this stuff. I'm just telling you from my perspective. I see some people, they seem like experts at jumping in at the wrong moment. And other people let wonderful opportunities go by because they just don't want to stir the pot. Autumn sent me a message and said, I'm 16 and I live in South Carolina. I say I wasn't raised without religion at home because all around me there is religion everywhere. It was maybe 2 years ago when I found out what my parents' point of view on religion is because I actually had to ask. They both consider themselves agnostic, even though my mom believes in reincarnation as well. Really? When I was little, I was asked by other kids which church I went to. I said I didn't go to church. When religious movies were shown at my elementary school, I sat out in the hall and I read a book instead. When I got to middle school, I started saying I didn't believe in God. And then after, started calling myself an atheist. Really? Wow. Around the same time, I started getting bullied by other kids who were good Christian kids, quote unquote. I saw these same good Christian kids start drinking, doing drugs, and having sex at the age of 12. I know that sounds bad, but I'm surrounded by rednecks. Hey, Autumn. Hey. Don't be jacking with the rednecks, because I am one. I'm a redneck, okay? And some of us are pretty darn good people. She said, I avoided all those things and developed my own moral code that I live my life by still today. After I started getting bullied in middle school, I opened a YouTube account where I talked about religion. I made a mistake and I deleted that account on accident. Then I opened the YouTube account that I still have today called Autumn Lauber, Lauber, thanks to the internet and the atheist community that resides there. I've made it through many tough times. I was always different than everyone else, and religion was just another that separated me from the kids my age. I thank you for the podcast and the videos you make. Your work inspires me and helps me. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Much love, Autumn. Autumn, you might be surprised at how many rednecks are atheists. I was surprised. Because, when I go on and do the podcast or I talk on the Facebook page or whatever, I'm talking about being in Oklahoma, guns and pickup trucks and all that stuff. Yeah, I got emails, I got messages from people everywhere. Hell yeah, we think the Bible's bullshit. We ain't buying it either. Talking snake, that's just a bunch of crap, son. So don't give up on us rednecks, all right? Don't give up on us. There's a bunch of us out there that share your worldview. Let's talk to area code 219. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Steven.
Thanks for calling, Steven. Thanks for being a part of the show. What's going on?
I just turned 15, and I am an atheist.
Always an atheist?
No, actually, I just deconverted or came out March 24th, I think. That was the day of the Wheaton rally. I was adopted from Russia very young by two religious fundamentalists, and they indoctrinated me very badly. I stayed awake, fearing hell, even when I was a Christian. But I was very, very intelligent. So one time I was on the internet, obviously, and I was searching documentaries, and I decided, hey, why not click the religious section? Just brush up on my face, see what other people think. And there I found a documentary called The God That Wasn't There. Have you heard of it?
I sure have, yes.
So I raised my eyebrows at this when I first saw it. I was like, the God that wasn't there, that makes no sense. I was very into it. So I clicked on it, and I said, I'm just going to try to glance at it, see what other people think. And it actually got me to start wow, you know what? This may not be right. So I challenged myself. I said, maybe I can read the Bible, see what my faith actually says, or my sect actually says. We're Catholic. I was Catholic. So I read the Bible, and I did it within, I'm going to say 3 months. And God, man, was I disgusted with what God did. Oh, the Old Testament is horrible. Just made me want to just throw up.
It's not the first time I've heard that. I hear a lot of people, and they read it with fresh eyes. They're not skipping over the inconvenient parts or looking at it through God glasses. You're reading it objectively, right? And you're thinking, man.
I read it as like I saw God as a person. And when I saw a person ordering people to get slaughtered just because they're different, and then slavery, and then I just saw everything that was bad with religion right there. So I just researched. I bought God is Not Great, God Delusion, and then I searched up on YouTube, and I found you. And I found many of your videos, and it just made me think clearly. So I was about a closeted atheist I was about 13 at the time, so that's 2 years ago. And in 7th grade, my teacher, I was just new to this whole thing, and I was still closeted, but my teacher had a religion lesson on atheists. This is complete coincidence, obviously. And she said, atheists are God deniers. They are going to hell, and I do not respect people like Stephen Hawking because he said there is no God. Yeah.
Wow.
So I stood up because I was mad. And I said, well, then you're just condemning me to hell. I'm an atheist, and don't even bother saying that we're God deniers because we don't believe. And this was just impulsive, and it just was a rash decision. And, well, I was outed in front of my classmates and my teacher, who's very fundamentalist also. We go to a Catholic private school.
You just stood up on a whim and bam, I'm an atheist. And, well, then what happened?
She just looked at me, and she was like, can I see you out in the hallway? And I'm like, if you're going to preach to me, then no. But, yeah, I'll go out and see what you got to say, because I wasn't expecting, like, punishment or anything, but I was pretty cocky, as you can tell. So what happened was I went out to the hallway, and she's like, why don't you believe in Jesus? And I'm like, because I read the Bible, and I don't like what it has to say. And I read upon evolution, and I don't think creationism correct. And I just don't agree with God's moral codes and his rules. And she says, you know what, we got to call on your parents about this. But I convinced her not to. I told her I would do it. So years came by, and I was 14 because I turned 15 in April. And when I heard about the Reason Rally, I was sad that I couldn't go because I'm so young. But I decided, you know what, this is it. If everyone's going to gather in this one place, I might as well be outed as well. So then I just told my mom and dad. And, well, my mom just looked at me and said, thank God you're not my real son.
Oh, my God. Oh, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yep. That's,
unbelievable.
It's hard. My family really doesn't talk to me anymore. It's I don't regret it, but it's hard having your mom and dad right there, and they won't even bat an eye at you.
Man, I'm so sorry.
So
I know. I wish you could apologize for other people. It just breaks my heart to think about it.
Don't do what Jesus does, but
wow.
I do not regret it, and I'm glad that I'm on the side of reason. And hopefully, when I get older, I'll meet you, probably, if ever.
If you, one day, when you have a 15-year-old, I hope we have the kind of culture where your kid says, I've decided I don't believe in any God, and you go, awesome.
Oh,
yeah. Or, hey, how did you come to that decision? Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your site. And actually, funny story, I went on your site, and I printed out all the contradictions because I was still mad at the time at my teacher. She's like, explain why there are contradictions in the Bible. Printed out your whole entire contradiction section, handed it to her, and I'm like, this is the contradiction.
My website?
Your website.
Pissing off the authority figures worldwide. It's thethinkingatheist.com, folks. I'm glad the resource was there for you. You know where that particular page of the Thinking Atheist, for those who haven't been there, it's if you go to the thinkingatheist.com and you click the tab Refuting the Bible, I split it into two sides. There's contradictions, right? All the stuff that doesn't jive with itself, all the information that's wrong. Some of those stories contradict themselves within the same freaking chapter, and there's a laundry list far from complete. And then there's another tab that gives you the chance to see the Bible atrocities, which is the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people horribly, brutally slaughtered, infanticide and rape and slavery and incest and all of this stuff. And of course, most of the time when I show that to a Bible-believing Christian, they look at me and go, well, his ways are not our ways. They're not even listening, you know?
Yeah, and she actually told me to, my teacher, by the way, this is just a little add-on before I go off because I'm probably taking enough time.
You're fine, go ahead.
She said, tell me one of God's laws that we don't follow today. And I'm like, well, this is going to be easy. So I flipped to, I'm not sure what book it is.
I think it's probably Leviticus if you're going where I think you're going, yeah.
It says a man that rapes a woman must pay like 50 shekels or something, like 5 or something, I'm not sure, and marry her forever. And I just look at her and I'm like, really now? Do we marry our rapist today?
I do not boil my goat in its own mother's milk. I don't follow that one today. I do eat shrimp, so I don't consider shrimp an abomination today, so that's gone. We don't stone daughters when they have premarital sex, so that's out of here. I mean, I'm just getting warmed up, people. Well, I'm so glad you called the show, and I appreciate your perspective and story. Thanks for a gutsy stand for reason out there, okay?
Thank you, Seth, and good job.
Take care of yourself. Wow. Just stood up. Bam. Here's one that was written anonymously. It says, hi, I want you to know that you should never stop doing what you're currently doing. Here I am, a 17-year-old boy living in an Orthodox country, 93% Orthodox, to be exact. Since my early years of childhood, I was always fascinated by the New Testament, especially Revelation. I remember when we were at church camp, I would love to read the Revelation stories to my friends before we went to bed. We were about 11. Really? That's a thick little book. Everyone was afraid, although at the time we would read scary stories. Although everyone was scared, I wasn't. I wasn't scared because I knew when the rapture would happen, I was going to go with Jesus and be safe up in heaven. All until the internet came along. Man, it's just one after the other. It's the information that people are finding online that it's helping for them to break free. He said, until the internet came along, you came along, the Atheist Experience came along, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and other sources that had different opinions from mine. From then on, I started questioning, and I never got a satisfactory answer. So this last Easter, my father and I were watching TV, and in my country, the, quote, holy fire thing is pretty big. And so he tells me, hey, John, would you like to go to Jerusalem with me next year and experience the miracle of the holy fire? And I turn over to him and say, Dad, I don't think that stuff is real. At that moment, he gave me a look I will never forget while whispering, how dare you, have you no shame? And he then stood and he left the room. We haven't talked about religion since then. One last note, everyone in my school thinks I'm an idiot for not believing in God. The irony. And the funny thing is that I always win debates with our religious teacher. And yes, religious education is mandatory, even in private schools, as fact. Plus, we have mandatory prayer every morning before class, in which I will not participate and remain seated. And believe it or not, one day the principal was passing by, and I actually got into trouble for not standing while the others were praying. He told me I should respect their religion. How much more hypocritical can you get? I haven't really tried to hide my atheism. It just came out naturally because I was that one kid who always asked the teacher questions, especially when it came to God. Thank you for your time and effort in conducting this show. A random teenager that you have helped. No, sir. Thank you so much. Sir or ma'am. I couldn't tell from the letter. Wow. Thank you very much for the kind words, though. Very much appreciated. Let's see. 603. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thanks for waiting. Who's this?
Hey, Seth. This is Kyle. How you doing?
Glad to talk to you, Kyle. What's going on?
Not much. The first time I actually managed to get through to your podcast. I'm pretty excited.
Awesome. Well, are you a teen or what?
Actually, I'm turning 18 within a month.
Happy birthday for next month.
Thank you very much. I've heard a lot of people come on here, at least tonight, and they talk about their experiences as kids in very religious households. I wanted to just share my story as growing up in more of a secular household and more of a tolerant place.
Cool.
I was lucky enough to grow up in New England, and we have a lot of very open-minded people up here, especially around in New Hampshire-Vermont border. I remember one time when I went, I was with a friend when I was really, really young, and my mother never forced us to go to church or anything. So my friend, he found out, and he asked, hey, do you want to maybe come over to church? You can come over to my youth group. We can have some fun, hang out. And I said yes. I didn't know what to expect. At the time, I guess I considered myself a Christian because that's really the only thing that like my mother ever exposed me to. At the time, I didn't know what a Buddhist was. I didn't know anything outside of I didn't know what anything outside of a Christian was. So I went to this kid's church, and it was just so strange for me to walk into this environment where it was all about, happy Jesus time and praise God and everything else, when I hadn't been exposed to that at all in my childhood.
Did you think you'd gone to the circus? I mean, it probably felt like manic and bizarre.
It was to an effect, and that has been the only time I've ever been to any sort of a church gathering. Aside from that, I haven't had too much experience with having to go to church or any sort of religious or non-religious persecution. My mother does consider herself Christian, however, she's not practicing. So things were kind of interesting for a while. I sort of hinted at being an atheist for at least 2 years. I've been an atheist since probably about 8th grade. I was one of the few people that actually paid attention in our science class, and which I find pretty funny because we had the most boring science teacher you would ever meet. He was pure scientist. No hair. What he did have was combed over, white, pants up way past his waist. Really nice guy, but is so deep into science, he was barely even a people person. He was the first person that really opened me up to education in science. Before, my mother had answered any questions that I had to the best of her ability, and I thank her for that. I was one of those kids that asked questions constantly. What's this? What's that? What does this work? How does that work? I was a pain in the ass to everybody around me.
Well, if she's just kind of an armchair believer, she probably doesn't have a very thick knowledge of Scripture. She probably doesn't know a whole lot about what it is that she believes. When you go to ask her questions, what does she say? Was it her lack of the ability to answer that helped you become more curious?
Part of that is what helped. And I know you mentioned earlier that you hear time after time that the internet is a big part of this, and I really have to say that it is. I'm in the process of graduating high school right now, and one of my projects is that we have to make a senior speech to give at graduation. So one of the things that I'm bringing up in this speech is how thankful that I am for being in the generation that has something like the internet, that has people like you, and just that we have this information highway, this place that's free and open to communication. And I'm so glad that we have that. And I'm so glad that society has gotten to a point where we're able to have something like this.
Me too, man. That's good stuff. Well, thanks for a great call.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care of yourself. I've got a 713. Thanks for your patience. You're on the air, the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is John.
Thanks for calling. What's up?
I'm teen. I'm 14 right now. I became an atheist when I was about 13. I remember being agnostic at 12.
So you just kind of slipped out of it even at a very young age. And how'd that go over with your peers and family?
My peers, I grew up in a very secular environment, which was good for me. Because I never really believed, my mom was Jewish and my dad was a Christian, but recently I found out he's some sort of weird Buddhist pantheist mix, which doesn't make sense because he tried to send me to Sunday school.
Why?
I have no clue.
Well, I'll tell you what occasionally happens to me. This is absolutely true. When I was a Christian broadcaster, we would target families, especially families with young children. We would put together events and promotions that went after young couples with new children. And the reason is that whenever a lot of people, at least in our part of the country, have children, even if they are not religious themselves, they become cognizant of the fact that we need to raise our children right. So they decide they are going to recommit to church and to wholesome music and wholesome activities and wholesome everything so that their child is raised in a wholesome environment. And so we as a radio station, we knew that, right? So we would put together programming that was, hey, let's make something that young adults would want to listen to with their young children. Let's do a concert. Let's do this and that. And a lot of parents, even if they don't attend, they send their kids off to school because they feel that is the responsible, wholesome thing to do. It makes them a good parent. I mean, do you think that's why they did it?
No, my parents are very secular. They wouldn't do that. I think they might have done it just because my dad's sister is a preacher, and maybe she asked them to do it, but...
That's jacked up. Maybe there's some jacking with you. Hey, you know what? Let's screw him up this week. Let's send him up to Sunday school.
Yeah, I raised hell, though. Like, when I went there, I raised hell. I was about 5 or 6, and I just, wailed and cried until my dad finally came and took me home, so... And actually, since my mom was Jewish, she always would sleep in on Saturday, so I never had to go. We only went to synagogue on, holidays and stuff. But actually, I had a bar mitzvah at 13, and at that point, I was pretty much an atheist. So I think that might have been a tipping point where it's just like, this is just bullshit.
Well, I'm glad to meet a young free thinker. Don't ever let anybody quell the curiosity in you. Keep asking questions, keep challenging, keep thinking,
I've always been interested in science and learning and just soaking up information. And as with everyone else, the internet is definitely responsible for that. You can just literally have anything you want to know at the click of a button. So.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for the call very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There's a saying that youth is wasted on the young. What they mean by that is when you're, I don't know, say 44, and you look back and you see a time in your life when you could have pizza at every meal and you could stay up 24 hours at a time, that you had unbelievable energy and stamina, and you just never stopped, go, fill every moment. And now that you get older and you look back and it's not quite so easy, you want to go to bed at, say, 9:30. You can't have pizza unless you have a bottle of Tums afterwards. When you run 3/4 mile and you have to call the paramedics. You know what I'm saying? If you knew then what you know now. I wish I'd been half as curious, half as excited about science. I was crap at science in high school. I was crap at it. Some of it was the teacher, but some of it was just, I just didn't really care. English, I was good. Math, I was pretty good. Science, whatever. I look at myself and I go, how did I miss the opportunity to, why was I 38 before I actually really discovered Carl Sagan? How does this happen? Start learning about how things really work. I just blew it off most of the time. Well, whatever. Man, sometimes I wish I could go back. Just go back and just take a class again and study again there and do it differently. You know what I'm saying? Do it differently. Engage. I had a letter from an anonymous girl. She said, I'm an 18-year-old from Puerto Rico. This is my brief experience. My town and father are nothing if not religious, yet somewhere along the way, I lost my faith. I came to the conclusion that people had no souls. Cheery thought. The very definition of soul, as ye old civilizations defined it, was the sum of your consciousness, emotions, thoughts, spirituality, rationalizing capabilities, will, and everything that separated people from being bipedal animals. Philosophers and prophets attributed this to a divine source, some intelligent design. The origin for our soul was divine and therefore eternal. When your mundane body died, it moved on to different pastures. Here's the catch. The definition is outdated. Our selves are determined by our brain, our mundane brain, which is made from mundane matter. When the brain dies, we die. No soul, no afterlife, no heaven. It was a depressing thought that left me spiritually handicapped. Then I stumbled upon something seemingly unrelated, the laws of conservation of energy and mass. It states that mass and energy cannot be created or destroyed, but transformed. In a purely scientific point of view, my mass will never die. My energy will never extinguish. In fact, every atom that my body possesses has been present since the beginning of the world, has been part of another object or life form, and has come together for just a brief moment in space and time to form me. My particles are borrowed. I must give them back one day. I'm just a temporary being. My life was not brought to existence for a cosmic purpose, but by a chain of causes and effects and incredible odds. I am here in an insignificant planet in an immense galaxy in a possibly infinite universe by chance, with consciousness capable of perceiving the greatness of it all with just a little set of senses. I think there's something wonderful about that. She also says, I think it's worth the arguments with my father. You may be right. And finally, a letter from Nicholas. He said, it's true that we're treated as untrustworthy. I'm saying we as atheists, I guess. It's true we're treated as untrustworthy, viewed as devil worshippers, and we even see friendships and relationships fall in demise. But upon coming out of the atheistic closet, you always find out who your true friends really were all along. That and that alone is inspiration enough when coming out as an atheist. Friends of mine who are quiet about their atheism are afraid of revealing their true identity to their friends. But my bit of advice when consulting with them is that if they are your actual friend, they will accept you. Wise words, Nicholas. Thank you so much for a great letter. Thank you so much for being part of the show. We have lots to do here in the coming weeks. We're taking next week off as I go to Canada. We'll be back on the 29th with the Why Did You Believe podcast. On June 12th, we're talking about atheist weddings. On the 19th of June, overcoming without religion. And on the 26th of June, religion takes credit for everything. Lots of good stuff coming up. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.